Honestly, one of the biggest wins was this award that we got at the Chamber Ball. To have this recognition of being Business Leader of the Year was something, again, it's not just me. It's Bliss. It's my business partner. It's my husband.
Learn how to build a successful luxury wellness center. Winning with Traci Bateman, president of Bliss Medi Spa and Integrated Wellness, on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the award-winning Executive Wins Podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. Today, we are lucky to be joined by Traci Bateman, founder of Bliss Medi Spa and Integrated Wellness, where luxury wellness meets clinical expertise. Visit blissmedispa.ca to learn about their work. That's blissmedispa.ca. On this episode, you'll find out what it takes to start a luxury wellness business in an underserved market. You'll also learn about Traci's entrepreneurial resilience in getting the business through COVID and expanding service offerings, all while implementing standard operating procedures and maintaining a high level of care for more than 60,000 clients. In addition, you'll find out why Traci won the Business Leader of the Year award, all while providing a destination where people can feel good about themselves. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our leadership team workshop called Turning Losses into Wins: How Great Leaders Turn Setbacks into Strategic Advantages. In this hands-on workshop, leaders learn a proven 5-step system called the Anatomy of a Loss to help everyone on your team understand what went wrong in terms of strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results. This objective approach is valuable because it sets up a psychologically safe way to talk about mistakes, which makes it about why the organization failed instead of pointing the finger at one person. Imagine what would happen if every leader on your team felt confident to fully explain a setback so that you could all take ownership and use what you've learned to turn a loss into a strategic advantage. To learn more, visit executivewins.com/training or get in touch with me directly at gord@executivewins.com. That's gord@executivewins.com. And now here's Traci Bateman with her executive win. Traci, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gord. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I'm so lucky to have you here for all the experience you're going to be bringing into helping our audience learn not only about your leadership, but your success in business, your sort of raison d'etre that you bring to everything that you're doing. It's so neat to hear that, lived experience that you're bringing everywhere you go. I got to see you at a black tie event, receive a Business Leader Award for the Edmonton Chamber. I mean, there's just so much impact that you're having, certainly here in the Edmonton community and beyond. But there's maybe a few people that are listening right now that haven't met you just yet. So if you had to introduce yourself, what would you say?
Well, I've been in Edmonton for about 20 years now. I was a born and bred Calgarian, so I moved here in 2012 for love. My background is serial entrepreneurialism. I've had about 5 different companies in the last 40 years, so I'm dating myself. But when I did move to Edmonton, I worked with my husband's grocery business for a few years. I came from a marketing company. I owned my own marketing company back in Calgary and moved to Edmonton. And my husband was he owned Sobeys companies or Sobeys grocery stores in Edmonton. So I worked doing some marketing for them. And when we sold our last grocery store, we were looking for something to do. And we ended up opening up Bliss Yoga Spa at the time. And that was back in 2011. And we were looking for something to do. My brother had opened, or he was kind of going to school looking at, he was doing an entrepreneurship degree. And he wrote a paper on how to open a yoga studio. And when we had sold our last grocery store, we're looking for something to do. And we had traveled a lot when we were in the grocery business because we had corporate retreats. So we had gone to Vegas and Portugal and Hawaii, and we'd gone to all these really great spas. And we'd come back to Edmonton and we're like, do you want to go for a massage? and we look at each other and go, meh. So we're like, well, we could open a yoga studio. And if we open a yoga studio, we could add a spa to it. And if we add a spa to it, we add medical to it. And we kind of grew this concept from a yoga studio to this great big luxury wellness studio and spa. And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. And when COVID hit, we had to pivot because no one was doing yoga anymore. So we changed our name and our whole concept to Bliss Medi Spa. So now we're Bliss Medi Spa and Integrated Wellness. And that's what I run. And through that whole experience, I found an opportunity to expand some of my passion. And I started also doing health and life coaching. So I'm also a health and life coach. And so those are some of the things that I do. I'm
Well,
also
and how lucky, and in terms of learning about you, there's something about wellness that's
yeah, there
important
is.
to you, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, this is interesting. And I'm so glad that you came to Edmonton for love. You had a chance to meet a great guy, obviously, who, has done well in business. And then you had that really interesting opportunity to choose what you wanted to do next. You had some influences along the way that's kind of got you to get started. But why, when you say, well, we could have done something, you could be in the auto parts business right now. Do you know what I mean? There's all kinds of things you could be doing. Why the wellness area? I know you mentioned this thing about coming back from the corporate retreats, but why invest in wellness for the length of time that you have now?
There's a really good reason for that. When I was 14 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer. And so my journey into wellness started at that age. And when other kids were, dating and into social life, my journey was how not to die. And literally, I started researching into alternative therapies and ways of prolonging my life at a really young age. And so I had a network of osteopaths, naturopaths, alternative therapies from the age of 15. And I started going down that path at a really young age. And it's interesting how now in this time, and it's really interesting because in almost a year ago, as of right now, we expanded Bliss into nurse practitioners. So I brought on 2 nurse practitioners. We're doing IV infusion therapy. We have Reiki masters, acupuncturists. We've really flipped Bliss into a more holistic avenue as well. And so it's kind of come full circle in a way that I never anticipated. And so it's been really exciting to see the trajectory that we've gone down because of that path 40 years ago.
Well, and thank you for putting in the decades. Like, look at what it takes to become an entrepreneur at the level that you're at right now. Like, start when I'm 14 and get inspired. Go along, do multiple businesses through another couple of those decades in there. Become a marketing expert. That communications piece, critical to any entrepreneur who's doing their work, along with having influences. It sounds like good family, good sort of business people around you to sort of then build up to this moment where you can start and then have to pivot your entrepreneurial business in COVID days. Like, I've got so many COVID stories from leaders who have been on the show. I was a big disruptor for so many people. But you've gone into this area now where you've got a holistic approach that's inspired. I've had 3 women in my family with breast cancer. I know too much about it from sort of that helpless bystander point of view, as a sibling, as a spouse, from that point of view.
Right.
So I'm so glad to hear that you're doing something about it, especially when we need as much information around those things as possible so that people can choose their best approach for themselves. And I think the things that you're bringing to the table obviously round out a global perspective from your traveling and all those things that you've done. So that's just wonderful to hear that you've gotten to this moment in time. So if you had to describe your biggest win through this journey, then if we come to that sort of question here, what would that win be and how would you describe it?
There's so many wins, and I love the way that you approach these podcasts and your whole business. I'm gonna touch on a couple of small wins that have kind of gotten me through Bliss over the years, because there have been so many ups and downs that have taken me through the business. And some of the most incredible wins have been women, mostly women, but there've been some men too that have pulled me aside at Bliss and said, "Thank you for building Bliss. It's gotten me through divorce, death of a family member, these traumas that have been part of their lives, and Bliss has been their sanctuary." So I've had these little micro wins throughout the building of Bliss over the last 14 years. But honestly, one of the biggest wins was this award that we got, a month ago at the Chamber Ball. To have this recognition of being Business Leader of the Year was something. Again, it's not just me. It's Bliss. It's my business partner. It's my husband. Of being recognized for the work that we've put in, and to have the recognition. And again, as a life coach, it should be all intrinsic, right? It should be, you're not looking for external validation, but after 14 years of really so much work and building from the ground up and putting all this effort into something that is so unique, and we're such a unicorn in what we do, to have this validation of our colleagues and of the community was pretty freaking awesome. It was pretty neat to be recognized, because you see in business, to industry and oil and gas and these big names and corporations, and to have this small little business in Edmonton that is women run and women owned be recognized was pretty special. And we really, really were happy about that.
Congratulations, and how nice to hear you sort of honestly sort of taking that in. There's two things to pick up on there. One, you're making massive impact. You can hear the individual lives. We
Yeah.
would go story after story when you said, gosh, we've had people come through
Mhm.
our business and this is how it's impacted them. I mean, that's immeasurable in terms of
Yeah.
capacity building and those things that you maybe set out to do when you were 14 to a certain degree. And then to get this award, you know what I have to ask, because I coach and I work with leaders as well. And what's your internal voice when you're standing up there on the stage? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one, you can front it right now and you can, I mean, and if everything's aligned, that's great. But inside, what's the inside voice when you're standing up there getting recognized by your peers? What's the sort of honest take on that?
Well, honestly, it's that young child, and it's funny because, I was Miss Teen Calgary, and I didn't win, and I wanted to be top 30 under 30, and I wanted to be top 40 under 40. So it was a validation that all of these things I didn't win growing up, it was kind of finally I got recognized. And it is hard, that's a vulnerable piece to admit, that there was so many times that I didn't win to finally win.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. And that's an honest reaction to then what externally is that great moment in time that I got to witness as an outsider. Hey, wait
Thank
a
you.
second. She did it. And then having a chance to pre-interview and hearing the sort of the tenacity that it takes. So that actually adds into what really goes on for leaders, right? You've got this internal voice, and then externally, I'm sure you go out to the world and you tell them it's great and you do your marketing and do your thing, except it's everything all at once. So I appreciate that you've got sort of all those things going on. Anytime we get a win and we get all the way to, being recognized as a business leader over what is a 13, 14-year journey, and probably
Yeah,
prior to that, if we had to mark the timeline.
of course.
I always like to jump into what I call the anatomy of a win, which is to look at the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind the win. Strategically, when we think about vision, mission, values, goals, that kind of thing, I think Bliss Media Spa, at that moment when you said we're looking for something to start, we're inspired by what's not available in the Edmonton region, we're going to get this going. How would you describe maybe the strategic highlights when you got started at that time to get going?
It was definitely very strategic, in a sense that we saw Edmonton, coming from Calgary, which is a little more fast paced, a little more cosmopolitan, coming to Edmonton, which is a little more blue collar, a little more, grounded. I found Edmonton was very grounded coming from Calgary. We were sticking our neck out, putting this luxury experience into Edmonton. And, you know, it, it was a risk. But it was so worth it, because Edmonton was ready. And now what we're finding that we put this luxury, it was, our core words were luxury, opulence, purity, comfort. And we created this experience of luxury and this experience that people weren't used to. And now we're seeing it everywhere. And people are emulating us. And I'd say for the first 10 years, there was nothing like Bliss Medi Spa. Or at the time, it was Bliss Yoga Spa. We've only been Bliss Medi Spa for the last 4 years, but there was nothing like it in Edmonton. And so now we're seeing copycats, and we're seeing people emulate what we've created. Not necessarily that combination, but the luxury component is now taking off in Edmonton.
Biggest form of flattery, right? When the folks are out
Exactly.
there sort of doing that kind of thing. So there you are, in a sense, in the Edmonton region, a category leader, first in,
Absolutely. I think
right?
so.
So you get in there, you get that thing set up, you get it going, and including having the chops to pivot. You know what I mean? You can hear the evolution of your business. So you're not standing still. You're not like going, oh, I hope that luxury thing hangs on. You've said, no, wait a second. We have to evolve this now. And in fact, with your established customer base and that chance to speak to them with your sort of, I'm going to say, newer, evolving offerings, you're probably well positioned to sort of move into that space as you then fill the need for the current marketplace as you're kind of doing that going forward. How interesting. So you saw this need for luxury, and that was a strategic highlight. There would be so many more things in there I'm sure we would dig into around financing and that kind of stuff, but I don't mean to get into that right now. So strategy, there's always a work plan. So
Well,
there's an
there is.
idea, like you and your husband are doing cool things and you're like, I'd like to. Was there a first conversation when you introduced this? Like, what was the first moment on the timeline that gets us to that award-winning moment up
Oh,
there with the chamber? What's the first moment in there?
the first conversation was, you know, we need to do something because we're too young to retire. We've got this chunk of money from the buyout from the grocery stores, and it's like, what are we going to do? And honestly, it was this conversation with my brother of, hey, I've got this concept. Should we do something together? And originally, he was going to move up from Calgary, and then it didn't work out, and we ended up going in this other direction. And that was the original conversation in 2011 of let's put something together. And I'm an interior designer, so I literally took this concept and started drawing out the plans. And we went from 1 bay to 2 bays to 3 bays to 4 bays. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it's like, okay, we're doing this. And that's kind of my personality. If I'm going to jump in, I'm going to jump in at 110%. So I don't do things small. And so it did get very expensive very fast. And, I hate to talk about finances and I'll talk about it not in what we spent, but our rent is also part of why we had to pivot constantly because when space sits empty, it's $40,000 a month. And it's like we don't have the luxury of sitting there. So we had to pivot. And I don't like the word pivot, but we didn't have a choice but to find ways to be creative in our space because it's really expensive. And there are barriers to profitability. If I don't maneuver in that space, we'd be bankrupt.
No kidding. And you would be knocked off your mission. You're right. A mission to serve those people. So isn't that a reality of entrepreneur? No wonder you won the business leader award because you know what I mean? Like you take your punches along the way too,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's that thing of like, wait a second, we're in a cash positive scenario.
Yeah.
And then we enter into what we think is going to work. If we track the per square foot that affected retail-ish businesses in Edmonton through that time period of 2011 through now to
Oh,
2026, we would see many people facing your dilemma
yeah.
about, what are we doing with this space? Did we grow too fast? Did we not? And in fact, you have the ability, you're still here. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's not a moment where you got knocked out by that because some people sort of get frozen or they get stuck. They don't have
We
the
almost
agility,
did. Like,
right?
it was challenging. I'm not going to lie, it was very challenging at times.
And then the pivot is in there to say post COVID, what is a luxury brand in this area of an experience in a sense
Yeah.
and more, I'm sure. I just mean to say, what is it at this time that then starts to get the square footage to
Yeah.
meet the moment, the marketing budgets to meet the moment, the new client acquisition to meet the moment, and you're in that moment now, and no wonder again you've been recognized as a business leader because that's what it takes. And there's so many business leaders that listen to the show, they're nodding their head. They're like, yeah, okay. I can't tell you how often I've heard 20-year overnight success stories, right? You know what I mean? Like Dan McDonald was on from Biz Safety Software. He's in Sherwood Park and early years in his, paying his mortgage with his mortgage, getting by 10
Yeah.
years to product market fit. And now they're, 20 years in, 21 million a year. And they're, on their way to delivering 30 to 40,000 course downloads a week. Unbelievable. But give it 2 decades. Like, I mean, and that's just a lot of sleepless nights in there in terms of getting through
Oh,
things. So thank you for
yeah.
being honest about there's those first moments, then you're an interior designer, then you got a chance to sort of go big, and then you got a chance to get knocked out like everybody by COVID. And now you're in this adjustment period, which sounds like it's headed in the right direction on the timeline for meeting the moment. Is that fair in your current business model? Is that
It's really exciting where we're going, and again, I think we're really unicorns in what we're doing right now, bringing in this private nurse practitioner model and looking at whole body experiences, and again, it's a luxury experience in this nurse practitioner model. These 2 nurse practitioners that we have are spending an hour with people. So again, it's a luxury experience in a spa setting. You're getting you can come in and have a doctor, your primary care practitioner appointments within 2 or 3 days, and you're getting hour-long appointments, not 10-minute appointments, and you're getting hormone replacement therapy, and you're getting your labs and your checkups, and you're getting comprehensive collaborative treatments.
And
And
this
that was
makes
me.
total sense when we look at the segment that you're dealing with. You know what I mean? Like you're not trying to serve the whole market. You've got your sort of ideal customer in a sense well understood, and they're saying, well, what do they need as they age out? Essentially, there's a big driver in there about just even the evolution of what that looks like. Although I'm sure you'd have some stories of all multi-generational people
I
that
have
are coming in. Is that
29-year-old
fair?
clients. Yeah, like I have 29-year-old clients. I have 65-year-old clients. We have this broad spectrum, but it's again a client who wants that experience.
And you're meeting that need. And that's, again, when you talk about dialing in a business and having to adjust and pivot as that thing goes along, you're not sitting on your laurels. It's not a blockbuster moment where we're going to sort of take our VHS tapes and go home. We're actually going to be able to stay relevant in terms of what the needs are for our
Yeah.
clients at this time. How neat. So we've got this strategy and this work plan over this sort of, I'm going to say 13, 14 years. It leads to this award moment. There's always people as the third step in there in the anatomy of a win. There's always people involved. If you had to describe your own attitude 14 years ago, how would you describe the journey? Is it easy sailing or
Oh
ups and
God.
downs or how?
No, no, not easy sailing. But you know what? The people are the most magnificent part of the business. And it's interesting because we went from grocery, which was product based. And so my husband had this really, hard time getting through because grocery is you don't have like the people are stocking shelves. Whereas we're now in a labor heavy, luxury, high touch business. And it's all about our vision being executed behind closed doors. And we have to trust that our vision is being executed the way we have envisioned. And we can't create this business without our people, and they are phenomenal. And I have to say, like, we still have our very first hire. Our very first esthetician that we hired in 2012 still works for us. And how proud am I of that retention? And, we've had people that have gone off and started their own businesses. We've had people that have moved to other cities. We've had people that have had children and gone on to, to have their own families. But the fact that most of our people move on because they've had families or they've moved cities or things like that, we call them the Bliss family. Our staff, our team are an extension of us. And we are so proud of the team that we have built and the way that they embody our vision of what bliss is. And we couldn't build this business without them.
Super exciting to hear. What's the secret sauce in onboarding? You meet new people. What are you doing in an onboard, like as a leader? Like what are you doing in the onboarding that gets them into your world in the right way?
That's my business partner. She's the general manager. She's my general partner and she does the hiring. And I have to give that her credit to her because she does that part of it. So there is something in, whether it's the, I think it's the team in general. I think it's the envelopment of how um they work together. Again, it isn't a team environment in the sense that people work in rooms by themselves. We're not we're not a raw team because everyone is quite individual, right? It's a one-on-one service environment at Bliss. So our onboarding is a little bit of teamwork, but it's my partner who trains them and they kind of it's that environment that just I don't know, maybe it's
Well, and
osmosis,
what I'm hearing in this is there's a through line from that 14-year-old self from you in there
perhaps.
too. And thank you for, again, why Business Leader of the Year. Well, we used to be in a product business and it was easy to put the ham up on the shelf. But guess what? Then we got into the people touch business and
Yeah.
we were still in business. And isn't that interesting that you have the ability, as a team, with your partner and then with the people that you brought on to then adjust and get this, I'm going to say, a Bliss branded experience all the way through from, I've seen video of your beautiful interiors. I mean, obviously that speaks to your interior design and that experience, but there's something then that's happening with the people side of things that is carrying that forward as well. Well, we would get into all kinds of, I'm sure the other people, but how nice to highlight, the people that carry out the work and the support that you've got and the fact that you've gotten this far with them. And you're now actually bringing on people with new skill sets to
Yeah.
meet the moment, and that's really, really cool. So we learned a little bit about people, and then so strategy, work plan, people. Operationally, you've been through some variations. We had bigger footprint and smaller footprints. We've had these processes and those processes. We've had things that you've had to go through operationally. Any operational highlights over those period of time that you would point out to say, yeah, we dialed it in, or this worked well?
One of the things that we've done is, and this kind of comes from the grocery business, is there are SOPs. There's manuals for everything. So everything is um, standardized. So not that we're a McDonald's, but every massage has a protocol, every pedicure has a protocol, every treatment has a protocol, every class has a protocol. So um, we want to make the experience standardized so that even though they have some bandwidth to customize somewhat, there is a blissful experience that you're going to have when you come to Bliss, that you have an expectation of what it's going to be, whether it's your aromatherapy experience at the beginning, whether it's your greet from from the ambassadors when you come in. There is a standard that you're going to experience when you come in, and it is all written down. We've got it all documented. So operations wise, we have it all very much documented.
So I
So
love it. Grocery experience is good experience. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like in terms of what we can pick from the best of those things, and SOPs for all those things speaks to your onboarding. It speaks to the way that we do things around here. It's got a Disney vibe in there, like to sort of say, best
Yeah.
practice or best of to a certain degree. I know our family chiropractor. It's so fun for me when I'm there and I meet. I'm at the front desk and I'm getting escorted in. Whoever it is that walks me down for 3 seconds down the hallway always says, hello, how are you? Like it's a real, so I can hear that sort of care is in there. And by the way, SOPs take forever, right? You've got to, right? They don't take 10 minutes. Like you don't just write them down and people do
No.
them. You would have been, it's iterative. Is that fair?
Well, we started that way. Like that was because we had time before our building was built. That's what we did in that time period while we were waiting for the build out, is we created the SOPs from day one.
Okay, so you hit the ground running with those things, and you
Yeah,
knew what that experience was going to be as you were going along.
we did.
Interesting, and I'm
Yeah.
sure we could get into other operational highlights around what it takes to expand, contract, do those things, take on new things as well. Any other operational highlights that you want to point out along the way?
Um I think just being able to adapt and, obviously, although we've had these from beginning, we have adapted them and we've managed to, there are things that we've had to make changes to because of things like COVID, having to bring in shields and masks and those kinds of things. So there has been adaptation and again, the word pivot, which is so overused, but yeah, we've had to pivot over the years operationally and, make adjustments as needed because we're not that rigid that we are not able to, we're malleable because it's just us.
Well,
We
and
don't have
I would think any luxury brand competing. We could be talking about Fendi purses right now or whatever. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? This is a very much a luxury oriented. This is valuable for leaders that are thinking about serving in this category because we're getting some really strong insights about what does it take to get that done. Strategy, work plan, people, operations. We've heard a bunch of highlights along the way that lead to a business leader award, which is the big win, sort of that was described at least for this conversation. Finally, we get to results. There's quantitative results and qualitative results. Quantitatively, you alluded to some specific individuals, but there are dozens, hundreds of individuals that you've majorly impacted over this time. Is that fair? Like in terms of customers served and that kind of thing?
I would think so. We have our client base is well over 60,000 people in Edmonton. And so, we've seen a lot of people come through our door and it's been awesome because we've had Jillian Harris, we've had Hilary Duff, like we've had some big names come through the door, but we've also just had Edmontonians and, moms and sisters and families and corporations. We've had it's lovely being a standard of Edmonton. Like it just it's heartwarming to be a foundational business in Edmonton.
Incredible. And how neat. I didn't realize that. So you've got, super global superstars rolling
Yeah,
through Edmonton, I'm sure doing their concerts or events or whatever they're doing. And they're like, where am I going to go? Well, they're going to choose you. Congrats. That's not easy to do, to get that kind of reputation, to be the one that gets selected for that. That's
pretty
quite
cool.
remarkable to hear
Yeah.
that. But along with that, you said then there's been tens of thousands of Edmontonians that have run through there as well and gotten their care along the way. So that's some of the people results. Financially, you're still here. Like it's been ups and downs as you kind of go along. Is that
Yeah.
fair? And I don't
Yeah.
mean to
It's
dig
been
into
up.
the numbers, but I'm just saying that you're here and you're doing your
We're
thing.
here.
So that's
Yep.
yeah.
We're
So that's
getting there.
good.
Yep.
And so that's sort of quantitative highlights, and then qualitatively, how's it feel after all this time?
It feels good. It feels good. It's, you know what? I love what we do. I love how we've been able to, we kind of talked about that, how we've been able to manage it and how we've been able to create such a wellness retreat. I didn't see it when we first started Bliss. It was a yoga spa. And the original picture was we'd get the numbers through yoga because it was a 32-person studio and we'd have 7 classes a day, but we'd get the financial part through the higher ticket items in the spa. And that was how it worked for the first 10 years ish. And, it changed, and it's been interesting how it has come to be more of a wellness retreat. And, we also coined it you during COVID or kind of after COVID, it's your retreat without having to leave Edmonton, because people weren't traveling. And so we wanted to create that. And now we've coined it where it's your wellness center in Edmonton so that you can get all these other treatments. And so, qualitatively, it's become this resource for, Jillian Harris said it's your one-stop shop. You come for IVs, you come for Botox, you come for your facials, you come for all of these things where you feel great. And the one thing that is so, so important for me is that it's judgment free. You come and get what you need done. You feel good. You feel great. You leave feeling good about yourself, and there's no judgment. And that is a big part of it for me as well, is that you feel good. And who doesn't want to feel good about themselves?
Wow, that is just so powerful, and how lucky that people get to come through there. There's a lot of leaders that are listening to this that I hope get a chance to have that bliss experience. I can hear that 14-year-old self through line. It's funny, we talked about the timeline of the business, but I can hear you with your experience and your motivation as you're going along to now have this major impact through your business, but then to be recognized. And of course, you should be recognized. And how lucky that we got to have some of the highlights, not even a tenth of the highlights, but some of the highlights along your journey that leads to, of course, you get recognized for Business Leader of the Year. That's pretty cool. What I was going to say, whenever I get strong leaders like you on the show, I'm always looking just for, as we get towards the end here, just a few sentences on the way out. If you had another leader, and they've got a chance to think about starting something like you, or any advice for other leaders along the way that you like to give a few sentences for?
First one is own your own building. If I were to do it again, I would own my own building, because when I look at how much rent I've paid, if I could own my own building, I would do it again. The other piece of advice, and I waited way too long to do this because I didn't have that. I didn't have that support network growing up, and I did everything myself. And so part of the reason I got into coaching is to help people not to have to struggle and to have that support network, is ask for help. There are so many support people out there. There's coaches, there's business coaches, there are people who are willing to help you. And I was terrified to ask for help. And so I struggled a lot, and I'd made a lot of mistakes, and I could have done things more easily and with more ease had I gotten over my ego and asked for help sooner. And so I think asking for help and putting yourself out there earlier is something that would help a lot of people sooner.
That's a gift. I remember if I'm 58 years old now, and I remember in my early 50s finally understanding perfectionism and then getting to let it go. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like, now I'm like, so if like something goes out and there's a spelling mistake or whatever, I'm like, it's going out the door. Like I don't like, we're moving on here because it's not the point. So I'm so glad to hear that you had that lived experience to probably get to the point where you could get help, in a sense, and make that more easy. And I'm sad these days for the maverick entrepreneur ideal that we have in North America of you're supposed to do it all. And then smart people, the problem with smart people is like, oh, I can build a website. I can design the whole thing. I can run the whole thing.
That was
I can
me.
be a
Yeah.
manager. I can be this. And that's it. It's a trap. And I see this specifically in the technology area in Alberta as folks are trying to get, they're genius inventors, for example, and then they're being asked to be genius marketers simultaneously. And they're never going to be all those things. So you said a smart entrepreneur thing, which is get those right people in front of you at the right time. And that makes a big difference. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah. I thought I could do it all. And I burned myself out really hard at a young age. And yeah, you can't do it all.
You can't do it all, but what you can do is win the Business Leader of the Year award at the Edmonton Chamber, step up on that stage and be recognized for, again, what we've gotten insights to do what you've done over this whole period of time. Well, Traci, we could talk for hours, but thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
being on the
Thank
show.
you, Gord. I appreciate the invite a lot.
Put in 110%, adapt to the market, and provide a unique luxury wellness experience that keeps customers coming back again and again. That is how Traci Bateman wins every day. Thank you, Traci, for your inspiring win. And if you enjoy listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our upcoming episodes, which include how CEOs can write best-selling books to grow their business, Winning with Doug Crow, founder of Author Your Brand. And if you want to learn how Executive Wins services like coaching, training, and facilitation can help you to align your leadership team so they can get more profitable results, then visit executivewins.com to learn how. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.